It's a weird one.
Impressions of
Yeah.
Meatloaf on that. Didn't you hear Meatloaf on that?
Is there some meatloaf in there?
It was very California.
It's very. I'm from.
I was gonna say you've got roots that
makes
run
sense.
pretty deep
Yeah.
there. No, that was fantastic. How about those things? Now I know
Thanks, man.
Heartbreak Rain is relatively new.
Yeah, that's actually probably the newest one on the whole set. It's. I don't want to offend anyone, but it's pretty political. I mean, it's got some overtones just about the world and how divided we are right now, and just there's a really great that song was kind of. I feel like it's kind of the offspring of two other songs that were a big inspiration for that. They don't sound anything like it, but Bob Dylan's "Hard Rain's Gonna Fall" was a huge kind of thing of that. I kept listening to that song during all of the stuff that's been going on in the news and thinking to myself, it's not going to fall, it's already here.
Yeah.
Like Bob Dylan in the 60s was predicting that this thing was going to happen, and I want to say to Bob, no, it's happening. It's totally, we're in it, we're living it right now. We need a new song to process that. Mm-hmm. And then the other song that kind of helped with this one was a really cool one by Ben Harper off of one of his Innocent Criminal albums, and it's called, what is he called? Black Wave, I think. But it's more or less about Katrina and kind of the disaster that happened there with everyone, left in New Orleans during that thing. And so the concept of rain and the storm and the sky falling and Chicken Little, all that kind of came all together into that. So
very cool, very cool. I don't know, how often do you listen to Dylan and how much of an effect does he have on what you write?
That's a good question.
Because he messes me up.
I was gonna say, everyone has to have an opinion on Dylan if you hold one of these things. I really sincerely appreciate him as a lyricist and as a poet. Being very blunt, he's not my favorite performing artist. His voice is kind of hard to listen to.
His material.
Maybe you guys are thinking the same thing about my voice right now. It's just, to each his own.
But I mean, that's usually I find what helps get the point across.
Yes.
Not just what you're singing, how you're singing it, and how it is delivered. The only reason I commented on it because there are so many times I look at whatever is happening, newspapers or the internet, and I just go, didn't we do this in the '60s? Has anyone heard of this man?
Yep.
And so, but I also, he's a tremendous inspiration for me. So
Cool.
I like hearing that.
Good. We should talk Dylan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Later.
Highway 61 is my favorite album.
Amen, dude.
Okay, all right, there we
wonderful.
go.
Now, one of the things I did want to talk about you when you sit down to write a piece of music.
Sure.
First, take us through kind of what would you say happens first? Like, what is there a melody? Is there a chord progression or a subject material that you go, this might work? So, and you're don't talk about Heartbreak Rain for this one.
I won't.
More so the first song you played.
Yeah, the
tonight was
first
really,
one,
really sweet.
6 a.m. So I feel like all of my songs start with a story. Before anything else, before the keys, before a lick, before structure. My favorite singer-songwriters are Ben Folds and James Taylor and some of those guys. And I like them because they like to provide a fly-on-the-wall perspective of real deep stuff. Mm-hmm. And I am such a kind of a sunny, happy kind of guy in real life that I don't want to be in the middle of the stuff. I'd rather be the fly that's talking about the stuff. So I can just kind of report on it like a newscaster does. So I like looking for a good story, whether it's my own, and I still want to separate and become the fly in my own situation, or it's a story that has literally nothing to do with me, which is that hand in the shape of the gun business. I want to tell a story. And so I look at the story, then I find a lick to match something on the guitar, just as an intro, kind of way, and then the thing just sort of...
Interesting. So you basically start at the beginning.
I do. I never start at the end, and I think only on maybe 3 of my gajillion songs I've written, I had like the entire thing in my head, and I could see it to the finish line. Most of my songs kind of build themselves, and I just let them breathe and become whatever they want, and then I try to tie it up in a bow at the end, So.
I'm learning that through this series.
Yeah.
When I speak to a lot of people, just kind of go, well, I kind of have this idea, and then I let it do what it wants to do naturally.
Yeah.
Which I think is just, if you're an artist of any sort, you view the world, you take that in, and then you trust the process, you trust what's going on enough to kind of take care of it and stuff like that, which
Totally.
I think all of us are capable of, and we should all practice more often. But I find it very fascinating because I always start with the chorus.
Do you really?
I can't help it.
I always start with the intro lick. It's an introduction lick, and then the chorus.
Yeah.
The verse is always the last thing to go. The verse is always the filler, so you can hear that in most of my songs. Just ignore the verses, just sing the choruses.
When you pick up the guitar to start writing, or any instrument, because I know you're a multi-instrumentalist, I've dug the whistling solo too.
Oh, thank you!
Impressive!
That's...
I'm like, and you're a harmonica player too, so playing
yeah.
and playing the harmonica and the guitar at the same time, people marvel at it. But the simple fact of whistling clearly, cleanly, in tune while you're playing the guitar into a microphone, nailed it, man.
I gotta give Christy the credit on that one. I was rehearsing that song today, and she was like, "Oh, you wrote a Paul Simon song."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Damn it, yeah, I guess I did." And so there's this moment for a solo, and that song is usually it's. Very punk song. That's what I'm doing here is like the acoustic arrangement of it, and I guess that's a Paul Simon song. So Christy said, like, well, Paul Simon does the whistle solo for me and Julio down by the schoolyard. I was like, I'll try a whistle solo on this.
Keep up.
So that's where that came from.
It's wonderful, and it's a texture that not a lot of people think to put in. So it's like it went the way of the old standard.
I'm glad to hear that.
So so you said you were writing it as a punk song and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I know Zeppelin is a big influence on you.
Huge.
So how much how much would you say when you sit down to write anything, not just Heartbreak Rain or a song of any intensity or even delicacy in the sense of like the later half of the Zeppelin 3 album, like how much would you say you run to the Zeppelin bank to come back?
99%.
Yeah.
Every song I write, I'll say, oh, this needs a John Paul Jones bass line here, or oh, this is totally something Jimmy. Is this not something Jimmy would do? Then I'm not going to do it. So I use that as the basic model.
Don't sell yourself short.
Well, I actually don't mind that because they drew so much from so many other inspirations as well. Just like the rest of those British wave guys, that when I'm copying Zeppelin, I'm copying Muddy Waters.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with it.
Okay.
I feel like it's the building blocks of life, Standing on someone's shoulders.
This question was just asked of me, and it kind of took me by surprise, so I'm eager to ask you.
Okay. Pisces.
No. Good guess, though. When you're in an environment like this, you're playing songs that you've written, you know all the secrets. You do. You know where all of them came from. You know what you've changed. You know what's added, what's missing, and all of those things. Having all of that information and then giving it to an audience of people, what do you want them to take away from that?
That's a really good question.
Yeah, sorry.
No.
Oh, Leo, by the way.
I figured. I guess the earliest musical transcendent experience I can remember was when I was like 7, and I got the Beach Boys Best Of CD. And I remember, I can't believe I'm telling you guys this. I remember I just like lay on the couch and listen to the whole album, and I would look at the jewel case and see like the pictures of the Beach Boys and read all the lyrics, and I'd see my reflection in the jewel case and be like, I'm a Beach Boy, and I really got into that whole thing, and it turns out the Beach Boys are actually a really great band to start with. Yes, there's a lot of really pop bubblegum stuff in there, but when they get into Pet Shop and stuff, there's real art happening. And I didn't know that I was listening to real art as a kid. I just loved what I was hearing because some of it was about surfing, not all of it. And so I guess what I heard in that was relatability on some level. I would hear the Beach Boys singing about in my room, and even at 5, I'd be like, I have a room, I can be in it, I can think the same things that he's singing about, so he's clearly singing about my life. And then later on as an adult, I would be like, well, he wasn't, and it just happened to be that I translated it that way. So I guess, to answer your question in a really roundabout way,
No worries.
I want something that I'm singing tonight to resonate with something happening in each of your lives. I hope that's a good thing, but if it's a bad thing, and some of these songs come from some pain, then at least we have the same pain on some level, and that means that we're not as lonely as we think we are.
Agreed. Playing the blues, that is the one thing. It's not so much about how I'm coping with it. It's more so that you know that you're not alone.
Completely
And that
agree.
someone else is sharing that experience and that journey, and it's okay. If we've got each other, we're going to do it.
Yeah.
Would you please play us some more music?
I'd be honored.
Zach Briggs,
Thanks.
ladies and gentlemen.
Woo!